probably shouldn't be posting this, because if anyone ever figures out where those train tracks are, they'll understand why I still wake up sweating at 3 a.m. I'm a graffiti artist, or a vandal. Depends who you ask. Most people think tagging is just dumb kids with spray cans and no future. What they don't understand is that some places call to you. Forgotten places, dead places, the kind of places that feel abandoned by the world long before you ever step foot there. And sometimes they should stay abandoned. The tagging community is toxic as hell. Artists beef constantly. People cross each other's work. Fights break out over walls and train cars. That's why I stopped painting public spots years ago. I prefer hidden places now, places nobody else wants to go. Old train lines are perfect for that. Rusting freight cars, miles of silence, entire graveyards of steel left to rot where nobody bothers looking anymore. A few weeks ago, my friend Lucas and I found a set of tracks deep in the woods after I spotted them on Google Maps. No laves, no nearby roads, just a thin black line disappearing into nowhere. That should have been the first warning. Lucas came mostly for the weed and company. He never cared much about graffiti, but he knew I hated painting alone at night. Truthfully, I think he sensed something was off before I did. We got there around 10 p.m. The second we stepped onto the tracks, everything felt wrong. No insects, no wind, no distant traffic, just silence. And sitting in the middle of the tracks with a massive freight train stretching endlessly into the darkness like some dead mechanical serpent. What immediately caught my attention was the paint. Not a single tag. Not one. That doesn't happen. Every abandoned train in America gets hit eventually. But this one looked untouched, almost protected. I remember joking. Looks like we're the first ones here. Lucas didn't laugh. We smoked while walking beside the train, our flashlights bouncing across rusted metal and broken wheels. He rolled another joint while I started painting. The sound of the spray can echo through the night, louder than it should have. PSSSSHHHHH. PSSSSHHHHH. Every hiss made me feel like someone was listening. Still, the adrenaline felt good. Within 20 minutes, I had 3 clean tags stretched across neighboring train cars. Honestly, they looked incredible together. I felt proud. That feeling lasted maybe 10 seconds. When my paint cans emptied, I tossed them down the tracks behind us. Clang, clang, clang. The metal echoed forever. Then silence again. Lucas lit another joint while I admired the work. I normally don't smoke much because we'd started giving me horrible paranoia lately. The kind where your brain convinces you something is standing behind you even when nothing's there. But I smoked anyway. Huge mistake. The second the joint burned out, clang, a metallic crash exploded somewhere behind us. Both of us froze instantly. Not imagination, not the weed. Something had moved. I could literally feel sweat running down my back as we stared into the darkness between the train cars. The sound was close. Too close. Then came another noise. Slow footsteps. Metal scraping against metal. Lucas whispered, "Bro, did you hear that?" I pulled out my phone and started recording. At first, the video shows almost nothing, just darkness and shaking flashlight beams. Then something came flying out of the shadows. One of my empty spray cans. It smashed against the tracks right beside us. And then we heard a voice. Deep, angry, too close. "You boys better run." The voice didn't sound drunk. It sounded excited. Suddenly, a figure burst from between 2 train cars, sprinting directly at us. We ran instantly. I remember hearing heavy boots pounding the gravel behind us while Lucas screamed beside me. The man kept yelling things I couldn't fully understand, except for one sentence that still messes with my head. "Don't trip, boy." Then came the gunshot. Boom! The sound cracked through the woods, so loudly my ears rang. Lucas nearly collapsed trying to jump over the tracks. My hand slipped off the phone, and the recording cut out mid-run. We didn't stop. Not once. Not until we reached the highway nearly a mile away. By the time we got back to the car, Lucas was shaking so badly he couldn't even unlock the door properly. Neither of us spoke on the drive home. What were we supposed to do? Call the cops? "Hey, officer, someone tried murdering us while we illegally trespassed and vandalized abandoned trains." Yeah, great plan. For weeks afterward, I couldn't sleep properly. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. And eventually, curiosity dragged me back. This time, I went during daylight. And this time, I brought my Glock 17. The train was still there, exactly where we left it. But the second I saw my artwork, my stomach dropped. Every single tag had been covered in thick red paint. Not sprayed over quickly either. Carefully covered. Deliberately. Like someone had stood there, taking their time, erasing every trace we'd ever been there. That's when I noticed one of the train car doors was open. Wide open. I don't know why I walked toward it. Maybe because part of me needed answers. Maybe because deep down humans are drawn toward things that terrify them. Inside the car was almost nothing. Just a single metal chair positioned directly in the center beneath a hole in the ceiling where pale sunlight poured down like a spotlight. Around the chair were ropes, chains, zip ties, some attached to the chair legs, some scattered across the floor. And the smell? Jesus Christ, bleach. The entire train car smelled overwhelmingly like bleach. Not faintly, strong enough to burn your nose. Like somebody had tried very, very hard to clean something. That's when I noticed the dark stain underneath the chair. And suddenly, I understood why nobody else had tagged that train. I still remember the smell more than anything else. Not the gunshot. Not the footsteps chasing us through the dark. Not even the chair tied up with ropes in the middle of that train car. It was the bleach. The overwhelming chemical stench of bleach. The kind of smell that instantly makes your brain wonder what somebody was trying so desperately to erase. Standing there inside that abandoned freight car, I could barely breathe. My eyes watered as I stared at the chair, sitting directly beneath a beam of sunlight leaking through the roof. Chains were scattered across the floor. Some were wrapped tightly around the chair legs. Others looked freshly tossed aside. The entire place felt wrong. Not abandoned. Used. I slowly reached for my phone, thinking maybe I should take a picture. Proof. Something to show people so they'd finally understand I wasn't exaggerating. But the second I opened my camera, clang. A loud metallic crash echoed from somewhere farther down the train. I froze instantly. Every hair on my body stood up. For a split second, I convinced myself it was just the wind or old metal shifting in the heat. But deep down, I already knew the truth. Someone else was there, watching. I didn't bother checking. I shoved my phone back into my pocket and got out of that train car faster than I'd entered it. By the time I reached my truck, my hands were trembling so badly I nearly dropped my keys trying to unlock the door. I've told this story to a lot of people since then. Nobody has ever been able to explain it in a way that makes sense. Some say it was probably a homeless guy living in the train cars. But that explanation falls apart when you remember the gunshot. Not to mention the bleach or the ropes or the fact that somebody carefully painted over my graffiti afterward. Why would a random homeless person care enough to cover my tags? And why did that train feel like territory? Like we had wandered somewhere we absolutely weren't supposed to be? The chair bothers me the most. Even now, months later, I still think about it almost every night. Part of me wants to go back and take pictures. Another part of me knows that would be the dumbest decision of my life. Because I still don't know if whoever chased us that night was trying to scare us or kill us. Sometimes when I'm lying awake at night, I still hear that gunshot echoing through the trees. And every single time, I picture that empty chair. This happened at the beginning of summer. I'm writing this now in early July. Normally during summer break, I stay near my college town or leave the country for a while. Last year, I spent almost 2 months traveling through Europe just to avoid going back home. But this time, money was tight and plans fell through. So for the first time in years, I ended up back in my hometown. And I hated every second of it. Most of my old friends had moved away, gotten jobs, or drifted apart. I spent my days hiking alone, driving aimlessly, or rotting in my room watching movies until 3 in the morning. By the last week, boredom was eating me alive. That's when I made the mistake. Years ago, my friends and I used to train hop all the time. Stupid, reckless stuff we thought made us feel immortal. We'd jump on slow-moving freight trains and ride them for miles through forests, tunnels, and bridges. I hadn't done it in years. But that afternoon, sitting alone in my car with nothing to do, the idea crawled back into my head. One last ride. I drove out to an isolated set of tracks hidden deep in the woods outside town. Freight trains passed through there constantly, and the area was secluded enough that nobody would bother me. The tracks cut through miles of dense trees before disappearing into a long concrete tunnel. On the other side was a small clearing followed by a massive bridge stretching over dark water. Back in the day, my friends and I would ride trains all the way across that bridge. But since I was alone now, I planned to do something simpler. Hop on, ride through the tunnel, jump off on the other side, walk back. Easy. At least that was the plan. I parked my car near the woods and walked to the tracks. The afternoon air was hot and humid, and the forest was unnaturally quiet except for distant birds somewhere overhead. After about 10 minutes, I finally felt it. That low vibration humming through the rails beneath my feet. A train was coming. I stepped off into the trees and waited as the freight train thundered past me car by car. Rusted steel blurred before my eyes while the ground shook beneath me. Once enough cars had passed, I emerged from hiding and jogged alongside the train. It felt strangely familiar. Muscle memory took over. I grabbed the ladder of one of the cars and swung myself up smoothly. The train wasn't moving very fast yet, so it was easy. For a moment, I actually smiled. Then we approached the tunnel. That's when I saw the light. A strange flash deep inside the darkness ahead. Not sparks, not reflections. A quick white flicker like somebody briefly turning on a flashlight. I frowned immediately. I had been through this tunnel dozens of times years ago and never saw anything like that. For a second, I considered jumping off right there. But the train suddenly began speeding up. Too fast now. The tunnel swallowed us whole. Darkness wrapped around everything instantly. The air turned cold and damp as the sound of the train became deafening around me. I squeezed the ladder tighter and shut my eyes for a moment, letting the adrenaline rush hit. And then, something grabbed my leg. A human hand. I screamed instantly as fingers wrapped around my ankle and yanked hard enough to nearly pull me off the train. My foot slipped. For one horrifying second, I almost went under the wheels. I kicked wildly into the darkness beneath me, but the train was moving too fast. I couldn't see anything. Then another hand slapped against my calf. I heard breathing. Someone was down there. Someone inside the tunnel. Panic exploded through my chest as I scrambled higher up the ladder, pulling myself out of reach. My heart was pounding so violently I thought I might black out. What the hell were people doing inside that tunnel? And why were they trying to drag me off the train? Before I could process any of it, daylight suddenly burst ahead as the train exited the tunnel. The second we cleared the other side, I jumped. I hit the ground hard, stumbled through the clearing, and turned to watch the train continue across the massive bridge above the water. I stood there alone, breathing heavily, trying to understand what had just happened. My mind raced through possibilities. Homeless people? Pranksters? Drug addicts hiding in the tunnel? None of it made sense. Why grab me? Why try pulling me down? And then, from somewhere back inside the tunnel, I heard footsteps. I slowly stepped closer to the edge of the subway platform, trying to listen over the distant rumble echoing through the tunnel. Then I heard it again. A child crying. Not loudly, not screaming, just soft, desperate sobbing coming from somewhere deep in the darkness below. At first, I honestly thought my mind was playing tricks on me. It was late, the station was nearly empty, and the entire place had that eerie feeling abandoned subway platforms get after midnight. The fluorescent lights above me buzzed softly while cold air drifted out from the tunnel like the station itself was breathing. Then the voice came again. Help me. A little boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old. My stomach instantly tightened. I walked toward the stairs leading down onto the tracks and hesitated. Every instinct in my body told me something wasn't right. But at the same time, how do you ignore a crying child begging for help in a subway tunnel? You don't. At least I couldn't. So against my better judgment, I started climbing down. The second my shoes touched the tracks, the darkness felt heavier somehow. The tunnel stretched endlessly ahead of me, swallowing the weak station lights after only a few yards. I called out carefully, "Hey, are you okay?" Silence. No crying. No movement. Nothing. I stood there listening to my own breathing, already regretting coming down. Then suddenly, help me, closer this time. I felt chills crawl up my arms. I shouted back, asking if the kid could hear me. A small voice answered immediately. Yes. Something about the response bothered me instantly. The tone sounded strangely flat, almost emotionless. Trying to stay calm, I asked where exactly he was. For several long seconds, there was only silence. Then finally, in front of you. Another pause. Just keep walking. Every alarm bell in my head started going off. I didn't move. The tunnel suddenly felt impossibly quiet. Even the city noise above us seemed gone. I yelled again, this time asking what happened to him. No answer. Then after another uncomfortable silence, the child repeated the exact same thing. Just keep walking, word for word, like he'd been told to say it. My mouth went dry. By now my eyes had adjusted enough to make out shapes in the darkness ahead. At first I could barely see anything except the faint outline of the tracks disappearing forward. Then I noticed it. A small silhouette standing maybe 30 or 40 feet ahead. A child, completely still. I felt a brief wave of relief, until I noticed the second figure. Behind him, tall, broad shoulders, an adult, standing perfectly motionless in the darkness. Watching me, my blood turned to ice. Every survival instinct I had screamed at me to run. I immediately stopped walking. The child didn't move. Neither did the adult figure behind him. For a horrifying moment, the entire tunnel felt frozen in time. I remember thinking, this is how people disappear. As slowly and calmly as possible, I started backing away without taking my eyes off them. The child's voice suddenly echoed through the tunnel again. Wait, then louder this time. Where are you going? The voice no longer sounded scared. It sounded annoyed. That was enough for me. I turned around and got out of there as fast as I could without outright sprinting. The second I reached the platform, I practically flew up the stairs 2 at a time. Once I finally got cell service again, I called the police immediately. To their credit, they took it seriously. Within minutes, the station was flooded with officers, flashlights, and search teams moving through the tunnels. I stayed nearby, giving statements while they searched every section of track. About 20 minutes later, one of the officers emerged carrying something small in an evidence bag. A child's shoe, just one, dirty and worn out, lying deep inside the tunnel. The atmosphere changed immediately after that. The police searched for hours afterward. They checked nearby stations, maintenance areas, security footage, databases of missing children, everything. Nothing. No missing kid reports matched. No witnesses. No sign of the adult. No sign of the child. It was as if both of them had vanished into the tunnels themselves. Before I left, one officer quietly told me they believed whoever had been down there likely heard the police coming and escaped through one of the maintenance passages branching off underground. But honestly, I don't think anyone there truly knew what happened. I've replayed that night in my head 1,000 times since then, trying to make sense of it. And this is the only explanation I can come up with. Some psychopath kidnapped a child and forced him to call for help so they could lure unsuspecting people into the tunnel. A trap. Simple as that. Or maybe it was even worse. Maybe the kid belonged to them. Maybe he'd been raised down there around violence for so long that obeying orders was normal to him. I don't know. And honestly, I don't want to know. But sometimes late at night, when everything is quiet, I still hear that little voice in my head repeating the same words over and over again. Just keep walking.